All right, the camera's on. Are you ready to go?
I'm ready.
All right. Can you tell us your name
Doran, Randall,
and your birth date
1/9/27.
and the war that you served in the branch of service?
World War II in the U.S. Navy.
So what were you doing before you enlisted, or before you were in the?
I was in high school. I was in my sophomore year in high school, and during World War II, the thing to do was to go to the service, whatever branch, and you felt like it was your duty to go. So I enlisted.
How old were you when you enlisted?
17, just turned 17.
And was that an appropriate age, or did you?
Oh, no. My parents had to sign for me to go into the service because I was just 17.
What did they think about that?
Not very much. They were pretty down about it. In fact, my dad enlisted too, thinking that I would back out, and of course he didn't pass, and I did. Back then, the servicemen, whether it be Navy, Army, Marines, whatever, they came to the school and picked up people from the school that wanted to enlist, and they give them kind of a short physical there at school. Didn't amount to much, but to give you before they sent you on to the final physical to put you into the service.
Did you remember if you had any expectation of what it would be like, or of what it meant to it? What would actually happen, or?
Never thought about it. I was just proud to go. Never gave it a thought. And I had a friend that was killed at Pearl Harbor, so we knew that.
Who was that?
My Tara Myers, that was killed at Pearl Harbor on the USS West Virginia, I believe it was.
And how did you know? How did you know him?
I knew him through work in the summertime there in my hometown there in Agri, Kansas. Yeah. And he was a very good friend of my dad.
Had your dad served?
No.
Any other relatives that had served before?
Yeah, I had an uncle that was in. No, you mean World War II?
No, before.
No, not to my knowledge.
And what did you do once you, or what was your rank once you were in the Navy, or what was your job?
I was a seaman, a deckhand, when I first went in, and shortly after that, I joined I was in the 1st Division, and I went into the gunnery department and became a gunner's mate.
So when you enlisted, you left from Kansas, and where did you go?
From Kansas?
Yeah.
I went to Kansas City for my final physical.
Okay.
And from there I took a troop train to Farragut, Idaho, where I went through 5 weeks of training.
Do you remember? Go ahead.
Then to Bremerton, Washington, where I caught my first ship.
Do you remember anything about training, either in Idaho or in?
Well, just they really didn't do much with you. Just run you through some physicals, and seeing how tough you were, and done some passed some swimming classes and marching on the gridiron and a few things like that. Didn't amount to much in 5 weeks. No, it really didn't. And back then, they needed men pretty bad, so they rushed you through training, which didn't amount to too much. You got your training more or less aboard ship, whatever division you might have went into, gunnery, medical, whatever.
So what was the specialized training for gunnery like?
Just starting to work on guns, and I had a first-class gunner's mate who was in charge of the gunnery department, and we worked on I worked on all different kinds, 5-inch, 3-inch, 40 millimeter, 20 millimeter. I don't know.
And what kind of a ship was it that left Bremerton?
That was a USS Raleigh, cruiser, CL-7.
How many guys were on that ship?
About 700.
What was it like being with 700 guys on that ship?
Well, it was tight. But back then, I don't know, when you go to shower, we took a bucket and our clothes. And we washed our clothes first, then we took a shower. And you probably was showering the shower was an open shower. It was probably, I don't remember, 5 or 6, 7 people could shower at one time. And you never thought anything about it, just something you had to do.
Now, did they have 700 bunks, or was there shifts, or?
Oh yeah, there was that many bunks. Yes.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. And there were, of course, it was just a flat piece of canvas just about wide enough for you to lay in and long enough to sleep on, and a real mattress about that thick. And my first trip out, we went to the North Pacific, and we had to tie ourselves into bunks at night to keep from being rolled out of the bunk by the ship bouncing, like that.
So was the USS Raleigh part of a group of ships that was being deployed, or?
Yeah, we went sent us out north to the Aleutian Islands, and we started out with just our ship. One day we were moving along, and I got up the next morning, and there were ships as far as I could see. And so there was a bunch of them.
And so what year was that when you...
It was 1944.
1944. And so you headed for the Aleutians first, and what did you do when you got to the Aleutians?
We helped liberate Adak, Attu, and clear down the Curl Chain. You know where the Curl Chain is, clear down the Curl Chain too, because the Japanese had come down there, and of course that goes down to Japan, and they had started and come clear up, and I think their next step was Kodiak, if I remember correctly, to go to Kodiak. And when they took Adak and Attu back, it was terrible slaughter from both sides, both Americans and Japanese.
So were you involved in that?
My involvement is laying off and shelling the beaches, trying to clear the beaches for the soldiers Army to land and Marines to land, and I wasn't involved as far as going ashore.
Right, but your ship was involved in that.
Yeah.
And how long was it hours? Was it days? That engagement?
It was days.
Yeah.
It went on and on and on, and of course our involvement was over once they landed. We'd lay in ahead of them, but once they got landed, it wasn't, because you surely could hit your own men,
Yeah.
So you backed off, and moved on. Yeah.
So when you were operating the gun, how many people were working together in that?
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 on one turret. That would be a twin turret, 8 people, and it was either hand controlled or it was automatic. You could switch it to automatic, and we had a director up above who set up there with just a small machine, and when he moved, you moved. It was automatic, and you could switch your gun into automatic or use it manually, whichever your gun captain said for you to do. Yeah. So I was a projectile handler, and what I mean by projectile handler, the shell would come shooting up from the handling room, and I had a tray laid out down towards the breech of the gun, and what my job was, when that come up through there, I had to knock it down. That was my job.
Mm-hmm.
I'd at that time. Of course, I worked myself into as a gun captain, you know. But when I first started, that's what I had to do. Scared to death. Scared to death. 'Cause you just was nervous, so nervous, and you are, you know. And we took a. I remember the skipper told us, and I guess I don't have to tell you this, but the skipper told us one day they called us all to go to church because they expected the whole Japanese Air Force out after us. And of course, what we got was high altitude bombers, and we got hit once, and it went through the deck, down 2 decks into the ammunition room. Didn't go off. So that's why I'm here today. Because if that would have went off, why? I had hard to tell what would have happened. Because the ship was an old ship, was commissioned in 1922, so you know how old it was. And of course, you didn't have the waterproof rooms like they had on the other ships, where you could blow one apart and the rest of them would hold you. You know, of course, we just had one big room, and if it blew up, why, you were gone. But we're just lucky.
Mm-hmm.
Do you remember what that was like? I mean, so at that point, it would seem like the leadership had this expectation that you might all die. Do you remember what?
It was scary. I did go to church.
Yeah.
You know, it was scary. Yeah, sure. And as a kid, I don't know whether that brings enough to be scary or brings enough not to be scary. I don't know. We done what we were asked to do, you know, and that was. I didn't matter if you was 17 or 40, you know, and we had guys that were 40 years old, you know, and you just you never thought much about it. You just went ahead and done what you were asked to do. You know.
So while you were in the Aleutians, did you go into shore, or
No.
were you on the boat the
No.
entire time?
No. No, like I said, our job was to lay off and clean up the beaches for them before they went in. You know, that was our job. And many times, if I recall, that the Japanese would shoot at us, but they couldn't reach us from the shore, from the beach. Their guns weren't big enough to reach us, so we could see the shells landing out here in the water. You know, they didn't get to us. And we had no kamikazes as they had a lot of ships did. And when he said that whole Air Force was going to be out after us, that's what we expected.
Yeah.
But it didn't happen that way.
So how long were you in the Aleutians?
About a year.
A year.
Yeah, about a year.
Working your way down.
Working our way down. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I never got off that ship for 1 year.
Oh.
So it was pretty. You got pretty used to it.
So what was when you weren't working the guns? What was life on the ship like?
Sleeping and eating.
Sleeping and eating.
General quarters awful lot of the time.
General quarters a lot of time.
I mean, you was at your gun station.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So when you weren't at general quarters, how was the food, and how was other life on the? I mean, what'd you guys do to pass time?
Really, I can't recall it being anything other than sleeping, eating, and doing your duties
Mm-hmm.
as a gunner's mate, which I was at that time.
Do you remember what your thoughts were about the Japanese guys on shore, or do you remember thinking about that?
Well, we kind of grew to hate them.
Sure.
I hate the Japanese, and that's carried over with me today, and it shouldn't, because the Japanese today didn't have anything to do with it, but I just kind of set in me
Yeah.
stone. And we had Tokyo Rose was I don't know whether you ever heard about her.
You told me about it once.
Tokyo
Yeah.
Rose was on the radio a lot. We could hear her on the radio telling us, what was going on back home, that our girlfriends were being handled by other men, and it was just, she'd just go on, try to depress us, make us feel bad and turn against our own government.
And so I've never understood that. So that was a channel on the radio, or that was being projected out so you could hear it?
We got it on the radio aboard ship. And how, I don't know, but we got it. I heard it myself. Yeah.
Was it just that messages, or was there music as well?
No,
or?
she had music as well, but mostly it was her talking. Yeah. Mostly her talking, trying to take away your thoughts about what was going on, and you make you turn against your government.
And what was her voice like? Did it sound like American English? Did it sound like a native-born American?
Pretty much, yeah, pretty much.
Huh.
Yeah, pretty much like American. Yeah.
So, speaking of back home, how'd you communicate with folks back home? Did you get letters or send letters, or?
I didn't much, actually. I wrote letters. Probably I wrote letters once a week to my parents, and it was through mail. Of course, we got all of our supplies, our mail, everything from a transport ship. We'd bring them out, and we'd bring them over on stuff. I was a gunner's mate, and my job was to I had a gun about this long with a little projectile in the end of it with a line tied to it, and I'd shoot it across the bow of the other ship, the cargo ship, and then we'd take a bigger line, of course, a bigger line would go over, and then we'd hang it up, and that's whatever stuff we'd come across. But that was my job to do that. But it was no, I don't think there was any too much thought about what was going on and what we had to do and what was going to happen to us. We just did our job.
So that was 1944 to 45?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I spent about 22 months in the war.
Okay.
Yeah. We went from there down to the Philippines and Okinawa and on into Curie Harbor. If you've looked at your map to see where Curie Harbor was at, it was in the southern part of I believe, of Japan. Anyway, we went in there, and we went in there at general quarters, because we didn't know what we was going to run into. And we started into this big harbor, and there was, on both sides of us, there was probably 8 or 10 ships that was run aground. They had just run them aground to keep the U.S. Air Force from sinking them. Once they got started on Japan, after they dropped one big bomb over there, why the Air Force just tore them a new one, really went after them, and that's what.
Did you get to go to shore in the Philippines, or?
No.
But you could observe.
I later went ashore in Japan, up in Hiroshima, in Tokyo Harbor. Went ashore, and they let us go ashore in a group. Just took us and showed us around, and it was a mess. They took us down, and we got to see at a distance where that big bomb dropped there, and I see little kids running around. They were sitting here by a tree. They had diarrhea. No, it was a mess. I don't think anybody deserves that. Really, I don't. But they asked for it. I mean, what they did at Pearl Harbor was not the right thing.
And so, how long were you there in Tokyo? And
not very long. Probably a month, maybe. We weren't there very long. We had no reason to be there. They'd sent the army in, of course, and taken over, and we didn't. We had nothing to do with those sort of things. So we went back and come come back home and put her ship out of commission.
Where'd you come back to? To
Go back to the States.
to Bremerton or?
Yeah, back to Bremerton.
What were your feelings about the war being over?
Oh, we were tickled. We were glad it was over because we could go home, you know. And most people had been drafted, hadn't volunteered, and you got out on points. If you had enough points while you were due to get out, you got out.
How were the points earned or
I
assigned?
don't remember for sure, but I had enough to get out. But I had signed up for 4 years.
So you had another 2 after that?
Yeah.
So where'd you, so you came home and did you get any R&R or anything like that?
I got to come home. I got to go home. And actually, before I went home, we took the ship, our ship that was on, we took it around through the canal around to the Philadelphia Navy Yards. And dropped it off there, and they were going to put it out of commission. And I got off from it and went home and on leave, and then I reported back to San Pedro, San Pedro, California, and caught another ship.
So they dropped you off on the East Coast, and you went back to Kansas, and then back to California.
That's right. Clear across the country on troop train.
Okay.
And
We did fly.
can I ask, on R&R, is that where you met your first wife then? Was that, or had you met her before?
No, I was. I'd met her in. Oh gosh, I can't remember. No, we came back to Bremerton. We came back to Bremerton on that ship. And no, it was on the second ship that I caught.
So did you
Yeah.
leave one ship in Bremerton and take another one around
No,
to Philadelphia?
I took one around and came home on leave and went back to Bremerton
Ah,
and caught another ship in Bremerton,
Okay.
USS Duluth.
okay,
And that's when I met my first wife.
okay.
You know,
Because she was from the Puget Sound area.
she was from Seattle.
Okay,
Yeah,
okay. And did you get married then on that
I
first
did.
R&R?
I did.
Okay.
I did, and then I left.
So it was an eventful R&R.
I left and went on the USS Duluth, and we went to Australia, and I got a letter from her. She didn't think we did the right thing, and she wanted a divorce. Well, at that point, you couldn't divorce a serviceman, so I just let it go. And then when I got back to I got to come back to San Pedro, and I got leave, and I went up there, and God, I was welcomed with open arms. And she lived with her grandparents, and not her real parents. She lived with her grandparents, and so I had a week, so I stayed there a week and left, and everything was fine. Except, no, it wasn't then. Then when I came back, when I came back up there, she informed me that she was pregnant. She asked me how I'd like to be a daddy, and it sounded all right to me. So when I got out of the service, I went back up there, and we bought a house there on Lake Union.
Mm-hmm.
And the house you bought the house. You didn't own the land. But anyway, I bought that, and then about about 6 months later, the girl was born, and I said, all right, something's wrong here, you know. So she finally admitted that it wasn't my baby.
Hmm.
And when the baby was born, they named her after me, Doran. And at that point, I hadn't quite realized what was going on yet, because, like I say, she was born in about, I don't know, about 6-7 months.
What was your first wife's name?
My first name?
Your wife's first name. Your
Glenna.
wife's. What was it?
Glenna.
Glenna.
That's it right there.
And what was her maiden name?
Glenna. You'd ask me that. Glenna. What was her last name? That's been a long time ago. Roberts. Yeah. And I got to know her real parents, and I stayed and raised the girl for a year, knowing that she wasn't my girl. But it wasn't her fault, you know, it wasn't her fault. And I knew who her dad was. Next door neighbor boy, you know. And so then I just, you know, I got to, I went to work for Tubbs Cordage Company out there on Pier, I think it was Pier 91.
Mm-hmm.
And bought this house and bought a car and the whole works. And you know, the more I stood around, the more I thought about it, the more I got to drinking and drinking and drinking. And this, you know, and my boss at work, wish I could think of what his name was, but anyway, he liked me a lot because I was a real hard worker, and he liked me a lot. And I told him a story, but he didn't want me to. He didn't want me to leave. He wanted me to go talk to the company lawyer. And I said, no, I'm going to leave. I was going to pack up and leave, which I did. I packed up a little suitcase and left. And of course, you know the story about her coming back and going to school after we already had 4 kids.
Yeah.
You know, and of course, Doris knew all about it and everything, you know. But it was it was quite a deal in my life, and and of course, after I got out, I went to work I went to work there. Then when I went back home, I left there and went back home, back to Kansas, and I wasn't home 3 days until I went to work in this bakery, and it was on the GI Bill. On the job.
So you were out of the service for over a year before you started on something with the GI Bill.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yes.
And how'd you learn about that? And
Well, we knew about it. You know, we knew we were eligible for it. I just had never got around to either go to school, I finished high school and got my GED in the service. But I never thought about going on to, all I thought was get a job and go to work, you know. And I just went, my cousin worked in a bakery down in Norton, Kansas, and I went down there one night. He wanted me to come down and have a look, and I went down there, and it was at night. I was watching him, and I pulled off my coat and put on an apron and went to work, and I stayed right there and worked for 2.5 years there. And that's where I met Doris.
what was the name of that bakery?
No, Moline's Bakery there in Norton, Kansas. Yeah.
Was it a big bakery or
No. Small, on the street bakery where you bake just for the. They did deliver some stuff to some of the restaurants in town.
And how did you go to a tradesman program for baking, or how did you use the GI Bill for training?
No, it just they had then they had you could take just called it the on the job training.
Okay.
And they paid, say the wage for bakers was $50 a week. I got $50 a week.
Okay.
Because the government would put in so much, and the guy would put in so much. And then just as it went along, he paid more, and the government paid less, and that's the way it went.
Okay, so they subsidized basically you
yeah.
getting trained there and him getting somebody on.
Yeah, for 2.5 years.
Cool.
it worked out well for me.
Yeah.
So what did your family and parents think, and once you got back from the war, and what was their
Well, I think, of course, naturally, very happy to see me out and home. Because when I first come home on leave after the war, they had seen, go back a little ways, the ship officer came to me and wanted to know when the last time I wrote my parents. So I said, well, I don't know. Well, he said, we just got a letter from I can't remember who it was. Anyway, I got a letter from some guy there in Agra, Kansas, asking if to have me write that my parents hadn't heard from me for some time, and they thought they saw me being transported from a ship to a transport ship on a stretcher, and they thought I was gone.
Oh.
And I hadn't written very good, and it was just kind of sad that I did that. It was my fault,
They were worried about
to
you.
make them have to go through something like that, And Red Cross, that's what it was.
Yeah.
And Red Cross got a hold of our minister, so to speak, aboard ship, and he came to me, talked to me. Yeah.
So were you involved in any veterans groups, or like foreign VFW?
I'm a VFW. Yeah.
Okay.
I'm Lifetime
Yeah.
VFW. I get their magazine, and I have plates on my vehicles, VFW. I'm involved now, of course, with the VA
Right.
hospital, and the state of Kansas provides us with license plates for our vehicle.
Okay.
They no charge for that, and of course then doctored through the VA and all through that.
Right.
And this all started in Seattle. This whole thing started in Seattle from a doctor there in Seattle who pointed me to the VA and told me, you go, you need to be seen by the VA. And then got me started with the VA.
We missed part of the story though, so what happened between are they here? Should we
Couple more
Yeah.
questions.
So what happened when you went from you went to Australia, and then tell us about that trip, because we missed that part of your service, those 2 years.
Oh, those 2 years, I went on the USS Duluth, and we started out. We went to Australia, spent 2 weeks in Australia, Melbourne and Sydney, and just they called it a goodwill trips. And we went to these countries and stirred up all the girls, But anyway, that's
Sort of.
we went to Melbourne and Sydney. Then we come back and we went to South America. I went to before that I went to China. I went up into China, up in the Wangpu River, and we were up there, and the communists were just taking over China, and we went up there to protect the U.S. Embassy there in Shanghai, and we were there for several weeks. I don't know just how long, but it was tied up there right up in Shanghai, up in the Wangpu River. It was dirtier than this creek right here. Just dirty, muddy river. A lot of people floating in it. Not from a war or anything like that, but just that's the way they lived. But anyway, we went to Shanghai, then we went to Australia, and from there we came back and we went to Lima, Peru, and down to Santiago, Chile. And I don't know just how much time we spent in those two places, but several weeks. And then came back and went to Panama, Central America. What's the name of the city in Central America?
Wonder which country.
I can't think of it. It's in Costa Rica.
Oh,
San Sebastian,
San Juan?
San Juan.
San
No,
Juan.
is that right? Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Went to that. Went to went down then and went through the Panama Canal. Went to the Galapagos Islands and Puerto Rico. All those islands down there. I went up and picked up some middies at Annapolis, Maryland. Took them on a shakedown back to and took them back and
Wait, and who was this? Who were?
midshipmen.
Oh, okay.
Midshipmen.
Middies.
Out of Annapolis.
Okay.
Yeah. And then that's when I got to go to Washington D.C. On that trip. And no, that was on my other ship. That was on the first tiger that we did that. Then when I picked up Southern, we went to Australia, South America, and then we went through the canal with the second ship that I was on. And then came back and came up to San Pedro, and I went aboard the USS Iowa, which is a battleship. And that was kind of fun. I've never been aboard a battleship.
So, how did your experiences in wartime and in the service affect your life? Is there any?
I was proud. I still am. Proud that I'm a World War II veteran. I think we did one of the wars that had to be done because of what happened to us. I definitely agree with that, not just because I was in it. I agree with that more than Korea, Vietnam, or what we're doing now.